My name is Stillman Rogers. I'm served as clerk of court in Cheshire County from 1978 to 2001. But I also practiced in Keene and Cheshire County from 1968 until I became clerk in 1978. The room we're in today is a historic room. This is the former office of the Clerk of Superior Court in Cheshire County. This room served that purpose from 1858 until the Superior Court moved to its newer facilities in 1979, January. So this room has seen a lot of history. When this room was first used, the fireplace behind us was real and was used every day to heat the place. That was true up until 1938 when the hurricane blew the chimneys off. I'd like to have the other members of this panel introduce themselves. To my right.
Yeah, I'm Arthur Trombley. I was an attorney in Cheshire County from 1971, and I retired in 2015. During that time, I was served as assistant county attorney under Ed O'Brien. And during that time that I was working under him, we successfully prosecuted a gang known as the Troy Boys. And, it was quite an interesting era, a very dangerous and exciting time for Cheshire County and for those of us who lived through it. I'm sure these people can remember.
Howard.
I'm Howard Layden. I've been practicing since 1968, still going strong and in my own mind. In addition to playing lawyer, I spent 28 years as special judge in Keene District Court. And spent a lot of time going back and forth between court issues here and court issues across the street. I was sort of the liaison.
Well, good afternoon. I'm the young guy here, right? I'm only 67, 68, something like that.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I came to Keene in the mid-70s as a young prosecutor with the Attorney General's office. And part of the reason I end up moving to Keene and living here is because of this courtroom upstairs and some of the things that happened there. So this building and what was this old courtroom that all of us tried cases or appeared before judges in had a huge impact, and not many people remember it now, so hopefully we'll be able to bring some memories back and enlighten people. Oh, and I'm Peter Heath, sorry.
So, Arthur, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Troy Boys?
Okay, the Troy Boys case, I'll tell you how it started for me. I had been a prosecutor for a couple of years at the time, and one morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from a trooper named Al Durling. Al and I had been acquaintances and friends since we played Little League together in high school baseball. And he called me up and he goes, "Artie," he says, "can you come down to the police station?" He said, "We've just arrested somebody who was involved in a robbery down at the Black Lantern restaurant." And he said he's willing to tell us everything he knows about this whole gang that he's been involved in, but he wants somebody to come down and give him immunity so before he does it. Can you come down? I said, "I'll be there fast." So I came down, and that's how it all started. He proceeded to tell us just about everything he knew about this gang, which was quite an incredible amount because, unbeknownst to us, they had committed, in addition to this robbery that they got arrested for that night, they had committed some murders in Massachusetts, five people in all, 3 in Tewksbury, Mass, a family, another 2 down in Greenfield, as well as numerous other home invasions, robberies, burglaries all over Cheshire County. They were called the Troy Boys, but in fact none of them were from Troy. Just happened to be the leader of the gang lived down there for a short time, and his followers followed him down there. So anyway, my recollection about this particular building that we're in was now that was in the spring of '76, as I recall, that I got the call. We ended up trying the 2 leaders of this gang, and I believe it was October of '76. At the time, we heard that there might be an attempt to try to break these guys out when they came down from being held. So there were plans put in place to put officers, state police sharpshooters on the buildings around here just in case something happened while they were being transported and taken in and out of the building. Luckily, nothing happened, but we were prepared for it. Another interesting thing that happened in this building was upstairs in the courthouse itself at that time, there used to be a little, upstairs above the courtroom, there was a little, an anteroom where they hold prisoners, and there was a little balcony that overlooked the courtroom. And in the course of the trial, while I was doing the direct examination of the one witness, who turned out the only witness in the case, the troopers who were sitting up there watching what happened noticed that the two defendants passed a couple of notes back and forth between them during their testimony. So when the judge called it a recess, they went down and checked out the trash barrel which they'd thrown their notes into, and it said, "That's it, let's get out of here, let's plead and get out of here." Well, so we knew when we came back what was going to happen. And so that's what did happen. They were convicted. I can remember still, there's a picture on the front page of the Sentinel the next day when they led the two individuals who were being tried down the front steps, a couple of state troopers on each arm, and a couple of other interesting stories. Right after they had gotten arrested, they had, we were told by the guy that spilled the beans on them that they were planning to rob the liquor store down in Fitzwilliam a couple of days later. So even though we didn't really think that they would do that, since this guy was in custody, we thought, well, they might just be bold enough and brash enough to pull it off, or try to pull it off. So we sent troopers, we met out at the state police barracks, planned the whole thing. We put a couple of plainclothes troopers inside the liquor store, sent everybody out. Across the street from the liquor store, they put sharpshooters in the house over there, got the people in their neighborhood out of there. All for naught, because they never did show up. But that was just an interesting sidelight to it. And the final little thing I want to mention about this case was, I told you about the murders in Massachusetts. Ed O'Brien and I went down to meet with the district attorney in Middlesex County at the time, a guy named John Droney. And when we met with him, he said, well, thank you for coming down and giving us this information. We'll be sure to work with you. He said, I'd like to introduce you to my new assistant who just joined us. He's going to be handling this case. He just graduated from Harvard Law School. I'd like you to meet John Carey. So that was how I met John Carey, and that was, he had just gotten out of the law school. So.
Now, Arthur didn't mention any of the names of the Troy
well,
boys.
I didn't.
But one of them was somebody that Arthur and I grew up with, who was I considered a very intimidating person because he was a couple of years older than me. Fuzzy Holton.
Yeah, he was one of the lesser lights, but right, he was in there.
Yeah,
Part of the group, huh?
He was always very intimidating.
Yeah.
My law partner was, at that time, was Arthur Olson. And Arthur represented one of those guys. I can't remember the name of the guy.
So many, yeah, there was.
But he was the client. Arthur representative was one of the ones that decided to plea out when he got a special deal. He had murdered he had murdered a garage attendant in Massachusetts.
Yeah, down in Greenfield.
And it came out that they had told him to shoot the guy.
Yep.
And if he didn't shoot him, they'd shoot him.
Yeah, they were going to shoot him. That's right.
So he shot him.
Yeah.
He testified against them in the murder trials down in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
that was a miserable case.
Yeah, in return, he got manslaughter instead of murder.
Another case, the first case, major case that I had when I was clerk was State versus Razowitz,
Sure.
which was
Which I was one of the prosecutors.
a tragic case of a young man who was shot at a Sunoco station on Main Street, just the other side of the bypass.
Right by the tire place.
Right by the tire warehouse. That was another tense one. You know, in those days, when we had a murder trial or a trial like that, we always sequestered the jury. And in the Razowitz case, we did sequester, which meant that we had to hire hotel rooms and put them up, feed them, entertain them, keep them over the weekend, which was always great fun. There were some great stories also about sequestered juries and jury trials in this building.
Keep going.
But anyway, Razowitz was a.
Where'd you put him out in West Keene? There, the old
Yeah, we put him
Winding
out.
Brook.
Winding Brook. No,
Out of town.
remember that?
That was so good.
Well, you were
That is
involved.
true. Yeah, I was one of the young prosecutors in Razowitz, and I think that's one of the first times I've met Tim. I came to know this area a little differently. I grew up in Pennsylvania and ended up getting out of law school and working at the Attorney General's office. I really didn't know Keene. I was just a young guy, second bagging for the more experienced prosecutors in the AG's office. First time I came over here, people have to realize this courthouse was just incredibly impressive for a young guy like me, because you go up there now, the courtrooms are very modern. And we're talking about windows, but you would go in the front door out there that you can't use anymore. And you walk in the door, and then there was these big stairs, and you went up the stairs. And then there was these two giant doors. You push these doors open, and first time I was here was the summer. I was doing a motion on one of these cases they sent me over. And there was a civil case going on, and you opened those doors. It was like a cathedral. The sun's coming through those beautiful windows, which they hardly have any windows now in courtrooms. And it was all wood. And remember how the way it was set up, Tim? It was a little different. The spectators, you were actually on like two sides, and the jury was on the other side. And the attorneys and everybody out in the middle, like the focus, like you're in Fenway or something. And it was quite something for a young guy like me. It was pretty impressive courtroom. Again, I still remember there was a civil case going on. A guy who became my law partner when I moved here, a guy named Eric Krompel, who everybody remembers because he was such a character, and he always had his label sticking out of his that was for the jury. And he'd wander just a big old fat country law. He could hardly lean over, and he'd go on and on. Fabulous guy. We've had so many great characters come through that courtroom.
Yeah.
Haven't we? We got a few of us still left, but
Think for yourself.
oh, right. The young people don't remember.
Two more of them were Arthur Olson,
Arthur.
who always had a joke,
Oh,
and your father.
and
yeah.
yes. How? I mean, you got to realize in those days. Now, again, security's high. Attorneys, people don't understand. Attorneys can't go in the back anymore, where the judges were. In those days, we'd come in. Again, the young guys, we'd go back there, and the older guys, like Arthur Olson, have their feet up on the desk, smoking, right? Talking to you. And you're sitting there going, holy.
And they were all on a first name basis with the judge.
All on a first name basis.
You talk about the fixes in.
And I'm sitting in there with my little briefcase going, man, these guys all know each other, you know?
Well, you remember Bullard and Shed.
Oh, my, I'd go right
Drugstore.
That was a drugstore, right across the street. Bullard and Shed.
And that was where, on court days,
Yeah.
if you wanted to see somebody, you didn't bother calling.
No.
You just went over to Bullard and Shed.
That's where you settled your case, right?
After court, Jimmy Davis, the judge in district court, would go over to Bullard Shed,
Yeah.
have his coffee, and if you were a young lawyer like yourself, you come over and he'd sit there and he'd say,
He'd
here's
help
what
you.
you did wrong today, Arthur. You should have done
should've
this, you
helped.
should have done that.
They would help you.
You had a close case, but you didn't have this, which was great, you know?
And Arthur could say the most outrageous things.
Yeah.
That if any of us
Oh.
said it, we'd have been banned
He would.
for life. But he could
get away with it. Howard, you're right. He could get away with it.
Yeah.
I mean, oh man.
Yeah. And one of the most impressive things I remember about that big courtroom up there, when you walked in, they had the pictures of all the deceased attorneys from way back in the 19th century on the wall, the Faulkners and Sam Bradley's dad, and Tut Bell's father. I remember a few of them that were up there. And speaking about Eric Krompel, his joke was always, I always walk in there once in a while, look around just to make sure my picture's not on the wall. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember a lawyer from Dover by the name of Alfie Catalfo?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And,
yeah. I tried a couple of cases with him later on, but I missed the one he had down
Well,
here.
the one he had here, I think, predates most of all.
Yeah.
Happened in the middle '60s when Arthur was the county attorney.
Well, that's right, because we always heard about it.
Right.
Tell them about this
And
escape.
the way I've always heard the story was that during a recess, the witness room was upstairs on the right-hand side of the stairway, across from where the sheriff's office was.
Right.
And the defendant was there. It was a heavy felony. I don't think it was a murder case, but it was a heavy felony.
Armed robbery.
Yeah. And
That's right.
somehow the prisoner managed to get out the window and down the
Shinny down the
drain pipe.
drain pipe.
And presumably somehow Alfred Catalfo didn't know that this was taking place.
Yeah. He's sitting.
Nothing happened to him. I never could understand why there wasn't some sort of contempt or
There
something.
wasn't that big a room in there. Really.
Yeah.
But somehow, you know, under his eye,
Very Catalfo.
he went down out
Yeah.
the window, down the drain pipe.
He was looking the other way.
Yeah, it just didn't.
see
I
it.
don't know what happened. He was gone.
Didn't notice his client leaving. Gee, where'd he go? Maybe I should tell somebody in a minute.
And I'm sure that Arthur embellished the story
Oh,
as
yeah,
time went
it got
on.
better
But it was a
each
good
time he
story.
Well, courtroom's seen a lot of. I always thought the setup and and the old wooden benches were tremendous. The way when I walked in, people had fans. It was like Inherit the Wind. People sitting there and I remember Louis Wyman as Judge King when he was here.
Oh yeah.
Wow, he was tough.
A lot of good judges. I
We
had
had Griffin, Grimes, Laughlin,
We had some good
Morris,
Morant.
I mean, yes.
Yeah. We had some.
That's going back a bit.
I was here to see them all.
Didn't
Some of them like their adult beverages.
Yeah.
Even
Shame.
while they were on duty.
Yeah.
And some of them even showed up at 11 o'clock for 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah. Let's take a. Oh yeah.
Just take a recess.
Take a
The
recess.
first day, I don't know if I should mention this judge's name. When I first became clerk in 1978, I had a particular judge whose family was in the hotel business.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, we know.
And I remember it was at 9 o'clock, and in those days we had a ceremony for the opening of court at the beginning of a new session.
That's right.
And this was September session, so we had all of the bar from Cheshire County.
Had to show.
Jaffrey, Keene, all of them.
Mandatory.
Sitting up in the courtroom. And at 9 o'clock.
Waiting.
And at 9:30, nothing. And the judge wasn't there, so I went out and I told him that the judge isn't here yet, but he'll be here shortly. At 10 o'clock, I had to go back out and tell them that again. At 10:30, I opened the door, and as I opened the door to go out and tell them that the judge wasn't here yet, they all rose like a body and
Yeah,
started coming at me, and I slammed the door.
Not yet.
He showed up at 11 o'clock and said, "Judge, you gotta get out there now." So we went out and carried it on, but it was just one of those things. That courtroom up there was set a historic precedent.
Yes, talk about that.
1853.
Yeah.
There was a case called State Ex-Rel Cunningham, which involved two young boys from Winchester, and both of them got into some sort of minor trouble. I don't know what it was, but they were picked up by the police, and instead of going to a hearing before a judge at all, they were immediately taken over to the state facility. Their father was really upset about that, and he filed a lawsuit against the superintendent of the children's facility. And
This is before any juvenile law, the way we understand it.
before the juvenile
System,
law, we know. Yeah.
Nothing.
And it's also before the Supreme Court had a house.
That's right.
In those days, the Supreme Court was just a bunch of judges who traveled around and went from courthouse to courthouse. So if the case before them was a Keene case, they'd come to Keene. So the entire Supreme Court sat in that courtroom upstairs in this very building, and they heard the case about these two kids, and they deliberated, and they came down with a decision that said that children have a right to due process of law, that due process of law should not be deprived to any citizen, including kids. It wasn't until 1967,
60, yeah.
roughly, 60s.
In mid-60s for Galt. Yeah.
That the Supreme Court of the United States, in a case called In re Galt, finally came to that conclusion. So New Hampshire was, 80-something years ahead of
time.
And the case that they cited in re Galt was the Cunningham case from Cheshire County.
Really?
Right from that very room up there.
Wow.
So that's a really historic thing, and a great tribute to this building. The building is important architecturally, but it's also important for what happened here. During World War II, the draft board
You would meet.
sat right in this courtroom upstairs.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't
And they're the ones that did all the drafts and deferments for Cheshire County and Cheshire County men throughout the Second World War. They're really important things that have happened in this building.
I never knew that.
Oh, family,
Like
that's
families.
you. You have to do.
I'm going to say,
you know the family.
One of the local traditions of Cheshire County has been father-son successes in the practice of law. And off the top of my head, I can think of at least 8 father-son combinations. There are, I guess, 3 of them still in existence. My brother and I, our father practiced law for 50+ years. Sam Bradley's father was a lawyer for many, many years.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess Sim's Goodno's father, but Sim is now retired also. So maybe there are only 2 of us. Oh, Tom Hanna. Tom Hanna's father was.
Yeah.
So there are 3 of us still practicing whose fathers set the stage for us. And I'm not aware of any that are following in their father's footsteps as we sit here today.
No, it's true.
Oh yeah, you got to remember also the Faulkners.
Right, I mean, but I'm just thinking of the ones because you had you had Ken Arwey and his father,
Right.
Tut Bell and his father, Arthur Olson and his father, Doug Watson and his father
Doug.
and grandfather.
Yeah.
That's right.
You had 3 generations.
3 generations, right.
there. Sim Goodnow and his father, plus Sam, myself, and my brother, and Tom Hanna. We're probably forgetting somebody, but...
And I think that's fairly unique. I mean, one of the things...
think of another one, Aaron Lipsky.
Oh, that's right. I mean,
That's right,
it's
that's right.
don't you think that's special? Our county
That's right.
has this tradition. That's nothing that attracted me here. The lawyers in our county have always had this tradition of courtesy and respect for each other.
Very
and it's a
collegial.
very
I agree.
collegial
Yep.
bar, a bunch of great people and families. That you don't see that cohesiveness in most other counties.
Well, I know when I practiced,
unique
when I
thing
went on
here.
my own, you could always call up somebody,
Yeah.
another attorney, and say, I got this problem, what am I gonna, and the older guys, and they more bend over backward to help you.
And I think you'll find, talking to any of the Superior Court
Yeah.
judges who've had the pleasure of
Yeah.
sitting here, that they thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't get the backbiting that you get in some other counties.
Yeah.
That's true. I
And,
think the
yeah.
county has
And
been
when
really
you've seen
good.
it, as clerk, you saw it
Yeah, people.
more than any of us.
Yeah. Well, actually, we also saw one of the first women judges do her first bit here in, I can't remember when it was, God, 19...
She used to be a master.
So
I
she was a master.
mean Judge Delianis.
Delianis,
She started as a
That's right.
Maryland Master.
She started as a Maryland
Mm-hmm.
Master, and I was one of the, probably the first clerk to use her. And I will never forget, I brought her over as a Maryland Master. She was in the old chambers, and Sam Bradley came in with a client, and his client didn't like women judges, didn't believe in them. And I thought, ooh, this is going to be fun. So as I took Sam and his client, this was an uncontested divorce, into chambers and said, Sam and Mr. So-and-so, I'd like to introduce Judge Linda Delaney.
There she, yeah.
And I just let them in and left because I no, there are many. There were so many stories out of this, and I wish we had some of the old people like your dad or Arthur around to tell some of the stories.
But do you remember when they
Yeah,
first,
the old people.
Yeah.
when they first started having no-fault divorces? I remember that everybody had a big laugh because for years, Bill Kennedy had the distinction of being the first lawyer to lose a no-fault divorce.
No fault, yeah.
And the reason was, I think it was Judge Grant was sitting, and the law had just gone into effect. So he went over and presented his case and figured he's going to walk out. He said, I'm not granting this divorce. I don't believe in this law. Turn him down.
Oh, you lost an uncontested.
He lost an uncontested
Yeah, it can happen.
divorce. I think he subsequently won, but
Yeah.
he wasn't going to win in front
You
of
know,
Judge Grant.
in the early days, I think when all of us started, one of the people that taught us how to do things, aside from Charlie, Charlie Contis,
Charlie
who
Contis.
was the
Charlie
clerk from
Contis.
1953 to 1978.
And then the judge.
Charlie's greeting was, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
You know, and he was as helpful as he could be, but his first opening was always,
Right.
"What do you want?"
Yeah.
And his assistant was Marion Hodges.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, talk about that.
Marion was an incredible woman, high school graduate. I think she knew more about the law than most of the lawyers who were practicing, because she'd been here. She started in this office in 1924, in this very
in this room.
office. She picked up a lot. She worked with several clerks, I think probably 4 or 5, including Charlie, and ending with me. When I became clerk in 1978, she was still here. She was sort of my right-hand person, helped to guide me, helped me to make the changes that need to be made, and God bless her, she worked here for something like 60 years. You remember Mary?
I remember Marion well. I started working with my father as we'll call him an office boy in 1965, and met Marion then, and she was the mentor to most of the lawyers that have come through this door while she was working here.
Oh, yeah.
She was very polite. You could ask her a question, and she would go out of her way to answer it. And, the opposite of Charlie.
The opposite of Charlie, but you know, when you came to Charlie,
Yeah.
after that, about 2 minutes of brusque,
Yeah.
Charlie was helpful.
Oh, yeah. He
Oh,
was,
yeah. You just had to.
You know how to go, but he just had the gruff exterior.
Yeah.
Charlie went on the bench in 1978, which is how I became clerk.
So, what about some of our court? How about our court reporter? When I came over here, remember, Mr. Robinson,
Oh, yeah.
now in today, you know, we have machines or we have recordings, the little microphones. Back in those days, when the court was here, you'd come over, there was still somebody with a steno pad taking everything down.
And she
one of
would
those
yell.
little
And
machines.
she would yell at you if you both talked at the same time. I can only get one man
That
at a
she would
time.
say, yeah, attorney, he'd, I'm not going to be able to take this down if you constantly interrupt the witness. So wait. Oh yeah, okay. You learn quickly. But they would help you. The judges, the clerks, Marion,
Yeah.
the people that have been here, they would help you. And that old court, it just reverberates that kind of collegiality and so forth. It is hard to find. We still have it though,
Yeah.
even with our new courtrooms, but it's not quite the same ambiance.
Well, when they had the jury panels up in that big old courtroom up there,
Oh, boy.
they
Yeah.
ringed the whole.
Like
the
I say,
whole
all the
room.
way around.
There was those benches up there, and it was just packed, and they'd call them down, and not all crammed in like they were in the new one that they built.
Remember, a lot of the problems you can blame on social media, because there is just a total lack of communication, not a total lack, but a substantial lack of communication between people in general, but the lawyers
Yeah.
in particular. I want to do everything with a computer. I frequently will call one up and
Yeah.
say, I'd rather talk about the problem than
Yeah.
go back and forth with the
Yeah, that's the way it
emails.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least when I was practicing.
You'd come here and you'd meet people in court, you know, so.
Oh, 1979.
So yeah, when did the whole plan to shift to when did that happen, Tim?
Geez, the plan, like everything in Cheshire County, when
Takes a
you're
while.
talking about building,
Percolates.
it takes a long time. And the old building had one big courtroom, and a lot of things wrong with it, including disability stuff. And I guess during the most of the 60s and the early 70s, there was the same talk about the need to replace the courthouses. Took place over the jail, it took place over the nursing home. Eventually, in about 1976, the county, which owned the building at that time, decided to put up a new courthouse, which is when the 1978 building behind the historic building was put up.
Yeah.
The building, we occupied that in January of 1979. And we
I would
moved
say
it-
one of the delays was that the county delegation hired an architect to design the whole courtrooms and everything. And the presiding justice decided that he knew more about
This was security, right? Yeah.
designing. Well, there was no security.
No, you couldn't get to the back though, right?
Yeah, he knew more about designing a courtrooms than the architect,
Right.
so he redesigned it, and the thing was never right.
Never right.
Never right.
Well,
It was unbelievable that they
Yeah.
screwed it up so badly.
The other thing that was wrong with it is that they were about $500,000 shy of their estimate. So instead of biting the bullet and spending the $500,000, they cut the size of the building.
Yeah.
So if you look at the
Exactly.
1978 building, if you look at the west side of it, there's a straight jog in the back of it. That's the square footage they cut out.
They cut out, yeah.
Which means that both of the courtrooms shrank.
Shrank.
And making 2 courtrooms too small instead of having one smaller and a bigger one. That was one of the reasons why they had to build another courthouse in 2013.
Yeah.
It's because the building was totally inadequate. I recall one day during a trial of a murder trial involving a woman from Swansea Center, that we were doing jury selection, and I got a call from the Sentinel. How can you do this? It's against the law, it's against the Constitution. And I said, okay. I can't remember who was it. I think it was Tom Ewing, and
Yeah, maybe.
Was
it Arnie?
For a lawyer?
Yeah.
Either Arnie or Todd.
Arnie, wasn't that?
They were the.
No,
No?
it was them. And I called him over
Yeah.
and I said, come on over. So I met him downstairs and I took him out in the back. And I brought him up, and I had put audio cameras in the courtroom so that I could tell what was happening, and the security people could tell what was happening in the courtroom. And I put him in front of the TV screen, and I said, now tell me, all of those people there are jurors. These people here are the lawyers for the state and the lawyers for the defense. Where the hell am I going to put a reporter? Up on the bench with the judge? And he said, well, I guess your point. Then they left. I mean, but that's the sort of problems we had with
That's
that.
how cramped it
with that
was in
building.
there.
Yeah, that's.
For years to get from front and back, you just walk right through the courtroom, even if there was a trial going on. Excuse me, Judge.
You had to walk right through.
Yeah, but I kept this courtroom moving. I had at one point,
Yeah.
I think one day I had 5 courtrooms going. I had my 2 courtrooms, I had the courtroom downstairs, and I had the probate courtroom going with hearings, because when I began, the backlog was like 4 years, and I wanted that down. So
I mean, one of the things I liked about the old courtroom, when you're actually putting on a trial, you're trying a case, the space, the sight lines, you could go up to a witness and show them a diagram, and the judge could see, the jury could see, everybody but you had, I'm always loud, but you had to be sort of loud in the old building. But in the newer courtrooms, like you said, there was no thought given to that. So you'd get up near the witness, and whatever you showed the witness, the judge couldn't see because they're over here, the jury couldn't see because they're over there. But our old courtroom was fabulous in that way, even though obviously it had so many drawbacks. It wasn't handicap accessible, and I'm sure the heat and the cold was terrible in there. I did like those windows, though. Juries, they start looking out the windows, but
well, that's one of the things. That's one of the things we were trying to do with this building. It was
Yeah.
lucky in when this building became empty, when the other courthouse was built in 2013-14. The county desperately needed space. The county attorney's office was in little cellar rooms downstairs. There was just a tremendous need for space, and we had some the money from the federal government that we had. So we built. We actually, and I was commissioner at that point. We did a complete renovation in this building.
in the building.
That, plus the renovations that the sheriff did for the old jury assembly room, which is now the radio control for the sheriff's department's dispatch system. We did $2 million worth of work, and it cost Cheshire County taxpayers $70,000, which is a hell of a good thing. Now we have something left to do. We have to do the cupola. Anybody who looks at the building can look at the building and see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done up there.
A lot of work.
But the windows, these windows,
Unique, fabulous.
haven't basically been touched since 1858, and they're disintegrating. They need help, and because it's a historic building, we have to keep these windows. And I think for the integrity of the building and the integrity of the structure we need to maintain these buildings. But it's expensive to do these. They're huge windows. So that's why we're doing a program now too.
It's so important. I mean, even though we had to lose the courtroom itself, to keep this building with the history that it vibrates, and the windows, and to be able to renovate it inside and spend the money wisely, but not just tear this, but we need this building. People need to understand the heritage of our court system and all the great attorneys and lawyers and judges that have gone through here, the fabulous cases that have meant so much to people.
And
so
people.
It's important. This is the people's building. Real justice here. And
this is only the third courthouse. This
Right.
building was only the third courthouse that was built in Cheshire County. The first one was
Right.
over in the middle of the square.
actually, where the square is now,
The
I've
second
read that.
one,
Yeah.
the second one is
It's over
Bullet
here.
Shed Building,
That's right.
and this is the third one.
Third one.
But this one lasted from 1858 to 1978,
Yeah.
which is the great part of the history of this
Tremendous.
county, and it's which makes it sits here like a monument to this community, not just Keene, but to the whole county.
Really anchors this side of the square too. You drive up Main Street, there's the white church, which is obviously getting worked on, and there's the courthouse right there, just beautiful. And it's an inherent part of our society.
Any closing thoughts, Peter?
Well, for me, I just think this program to raise money to keep the court renovated and to fix these windows in the cupola, it's so important to the history and tradition here in Keene, and the history of and tradition of justice and the families that have gone through this courtroom. It's an important heritage to remember and to treat with honor and respect. So this is an important project.
Howard?
I think it's one of the, if we think back little ways as to why it has taken so long to have courthouse renovations, we have to remember that there was a time when people thought that the courthouse ought to move out of the center of Keene.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big hue and cry.
That was.
And it would have been one of the biggest mistakes that anybody could have made if they had ever moved this courthouse from a central location. And we're fortunate that they had the land to the rear of this building here so that it could stay right here. But there was a strong move.
Oh, yeah.
In 1999, we did a study because the county made a proposal to the state to do for courthouse renovation, which would have been probably better than what they did. And they did a study, a traffic study here, and this building, the courthouse, moves, I think, something like 280 to 320 people a day into this downtown. It's really an important generator of activity for the welfare of Keene. It's critical that it stay in Keene. When I was commissioner in 2011, the Supreme Court decided that it wanted to build a new courthouse, and they were talking about moving it out of Keene.
That's right.
They were talking about putting the marital division down in Jaffrey because they had
Right.
space. That would have inconvenienced and made it difficult for most families in this county to seek justice. The commissioners and the city of Keene worked hard together to put together a scheme to make it possible for us to keep the courthouse in downtown Keene.
And at that same time, Keene District Court had been requested to move from its facilities over in the
Yes, City Hall.
across,
there, right?
at
Yeah.
City Hall across the square, and we had it all set up to move down on Marlborough Street where the police station is, and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court came over and said that he was not going to allow a district court to be next to a police station, and the alternative plan was going to be basically to split it up and
in Jaffrey.
some of it was going to end up in Jaffrey. Thank God, everybody put it together so that it could stay right here.
Yeah.
I can remember a meeting we had to discuss it down in,
You,
and I can remember Peter Heath in the background. I don't have to go to Jaffrey.
I'm not going
Oh, you divorce lawyers are going over there.
we're doing all this criminals. No, it would have been horrible
Would have been
for
disastrous.
all our
Yeah,
citizens.
there's no question. It was better off right here. This is the center of the county. There's a reason it was located here. So, yeah, I agree. Where it
We're
should be.
fortunate.
I think it's fortunate that we're able to get together like this.
Sure.
I wish somebody had gotten together people who were here before us, like Howard
And got
Senior.
memories from people.
Yeah, I
others.
think it's important to
Preserve this.
memorialize that sort of history.
I agree.
Thank you for coming, guys.
Yes, thank you.
And our pleasure.
We're a pleasure to be here.